So we've been exploring some different ways to build a lance. And while part of this is player personality, the type of machines that you want to play, the other primary balance to this as a mech warrior and a mech commander is to know what you're getting into, to be aware of what you're running. So tactically, as things evolve on the tabletop, you can make the best decisions as possible, or at least understand what areas are weak in a build and maybe plug that with some combined arms or some infantry, or just know when I can have that momentum and possibly attack, or based on the lances where we're going in this current configuration, maybe I want to be a little bit more defensive. I'm trying to control that random in the game. So within that framework, what do we do about mechs that are a dedicated range band? How do we deal with that? So we're taking all that battle value, and that battle value could be on one level a single mech, or the battle value building a lance, a dedicated range band. And this is kind of a great example. It's also a favorite mech of mine that I love to play. So I've got experience in running this. I know the advantages and disadvantages. The Javelin. This is a light mech, 2 short-range missiles, 6-packs, left torso, right torso. That's it. It's got some very, very interesting short-range punch. It's got the spread. It's a great crit seeker, but that's it. It's short-range missile packs. I've got nothing else not only to back me up, but moving to the medium and long ranges, there's just nothing. So the dedicated range band of this is short range. I could counter with another mech and say dedicated long range band. So this understanding that in the case of the Javelin as a Mech Commander Tactica, if you catch this machine at long range, yes, it's a light mech, it's going to get plinked down even faster, but if you catch me at long range and you can keep me there, you're just going to, not only can I not hit you back, you're just going to tear me apart. I'm not even going to try to make an approach. I'm not even going to try to run across the table. It's just not going to happen. If it's a medium range, okay, yeah, I guess I could fire back at long range for myself with those 6-packs. But again, I don't want to compete at that. Now, if we're at short range, I've got some punch. I've got some bite. So the first thing that we're looking at is it is very all or nothing with a dedicated range band mech, meaning I need to get to that range and I need to keep at that range. How exactly am I going to do that? In the case of the Javelin, it's fast, but not overly fast. With that, what we see with a dedicated range band machine is you need something else to make it work. You need what I call a delivery system. So now what we get into is this sidebar of you might have a mech that is really effective and really works in this one range band. You look at that battle value, but now there's almost kind of like a tax that you need to pay because you need something else to make it effectively work. You know, on a much, much smaller scale, much, much smaller battle value, infantry need a delivery system. And I've pushed up to the channel, Battletech playlist here, lots of infantry ideas. Defensively, I could take 5 or 6 stands of infantry if I'm going to be on the defensive, embed them, dig them in, city fight, city tech, great, here we go. But anything beyond that, what's my delivery system? APCs, Karnovs, Goblin, attack tanks. I need to, when I'm calculating my battle value and planning out my lance build, include that. It's not just enough to take it. And with the Javelin light mech, going back to that example, it's a light mech, so the additional battle value buy-in is not that much. Yes, it's going to be modified based on the total game we're playing. 2K battle value versus 5 or 10K battle value is vastly different. But I say that because if you look at some of the heavier and assault mechs that are dedicated range bands, the buy-in system for that's going to be a lot more expensive battle value because, well, you're paying for a heavy. You're paying for an assault. So this idea with the Javelin is I'm going to need something to send forward to keep my target busy with something else. And then at that point, I'm going to kind of slip the Javelin in and utilize that. An example would be, it's another favorite mech of mine that I run, and I will often pair these two, is a Hunchback. Hunchback is focused on that autocannon 20, but it also has those medium lasers. And it's also a medium mech, so in theory, I say theory, it could take a little bit more, although I'm going to do my best not to get shot at. But this idea of taking these two mechs, sending them forward, very low battle value, I might buy in some cheap hovers or some cheap tanks. But the idea is if I can push up that hunchback first, that will get my opponent locked with the hunchback, dealing with the hunchback, either trying to torrent it down or trying to stay out of range or at least at long range without autocannon. And they have to. That AC-20, they need to address that in some way, either by avoiding it or destroying it. That's going to allow the Javelin to move forward and, in theory, get into position, get in there unchallenged, and unleash those short-range missile six-packs, hopefully at rear armor. And as I'm running up, if the focus is on the Javelin, because you realize, hey, this is a short-range band, so the 2 or 3 turns as it's moving into position, that's open target, then, of course, you will put the hurt on my Javelin, but you're not going to get away battle value free, because then I'm really going to aggressively push the hunchback and try to nail you with that autocannon 20. And this is just a template. Again, we're looking at kind of this idea of if you spend the battle value and you're locked in some of these mechs that are not mixed range bands, but dedicated to one. The difference on a sidebar, we explored the blackjack, we explored the longbow, we explored the rifleman, we explored the Jaeger mech. I pushed all those up to the Battletech channel here. Those are not dedicated range band mechs. Those are more support mechs, meaning you're picking a role. Back it up one further to framework it. We've got a trooper mech. Trooper mech it's got a little bit of everything, can do a little bit of everything, whatever mission, whatever hex map you pull out, it's going to be okay, right? Orion, Thunderbolt, Catapult. Yes, there could be better mechs, but I could custom tailor it for the mission. But based on whatever I find myself, whatever my opponent brings, these are just solid anchor choices. Then, those are trooper mechs, all taker mechs, whatever terminology you want to utilize. Then we've got the support mechs where we're piling that battle value into a specific role. If I can keep it at that role, the battle value will pay off. If I can't keep it in that role, because of course my opponent's not just going to sit there and let that happen, I've still got some fight back. So looking at the blackjack, because we're looking at mediums, I'm going to plink away with those autocannon 2s. But if I'm engaged, I've still got medium lasers. I've got something to push back. I've got multiple range bands while I excel at the extreme long with the AC-2s, or if it's a Jaeger mech, 2s and 5s, pushing that out. If I get caught at a closer range band, I've got something. So it's not a single lock-in range band. It's a dedicated mech. But this type of mechs out there, now for the third framework that are dedicated, locked in at one range band, all the battle values pulled into that, you need a delivery system. You need something to make it work. Otherwise, there's the potential, going back to the start of this Tactica vlog, as your mech commander, the chances are it won't work well. You'll become frustrated and you'll dismiss the mech without properly understanding it needs a little something else. It needs a little something else, which I call a delivery system. And what that is depends on the battle value, depends on my player personality, what I feel like taking, depends on, in that moment, how you want to do that. There is no right or wrong, and there are multiple delivery systems, but you need to pay that battle value tax and add that on to it. But to counter that, if you can make it work, some of these dedicated range band mechs are extremely effective and can really take your opponent by surprise with the type of damage or momentum possibility changing aspects of the game in that moment, if you can pull it off.